To join you this evening. It's not the first time I've been in this house, but it's sort of the first time I've been in the Beis Medrash. It's a little different. It's a little different. Shus Rav. It's Hoshana Raba, and it's coming toward the end of Yemei Hadin. Although it continues through Hanukkah and whatever, but Hoshana Raba started Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and just want to throw out one question that I'm going to try to touch on tonight, and it has to do with what's my responsibility as an Oved Hashem. What am I supposed to do? It doesn't begin or end with being up on Tikkun Ve'el Hoshana Rabbah. It helps. But what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me? You know that Chazal tell us that it's a special relationship, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't have any intermediaries. Yaakov, Chavel Nachla, so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there's no malach, it's us and Him. When we follow in His way, when we do His Ratzon Hashem, then we're on top of the world. And when we don't, we fall down to the lowest of challenges. So I wanted to talk on a few different midot, a few different kochos hanefesh, a few drivers, as I like to call it, that I think that what an Oved Hashem is. The first, we talk about Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was the first Arishon Sheikir Esdoro, the first one to recognize the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And we talk about the chesed of Avram. We talk about his kindness. And what's the famous story of the chesed of Avram? No? What's the famous story? Of which case? Three malachim. Right? 3 angels come. And what does he do? He makes them all the food in the world. He runs here, he runs there. It was right after the Brit Milah. Unbelievable. Pasuk after pasuk after pasuk in the Torah. Every word of the Torah has meaning. Every letter has meaning. And it spends all the time telling me the story of Avram Avinu's chesed. Rav Tzadok HaKohen says it's very interesting that that's the story we tell about the chesed of Avram Avinu. You know why it's a fascinating story? Because his chesed wasn't needed. They were malachim. They were angels. So the whole story didn't make any sense. And that's the story we tell about the chesed of Avram. Says Reb Tzadok, you see from here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't only look at the chesed that you're doing, but your desire to do chesed. What drives us? Not the result of it. The story that they tell about Avram, there was no result. They didn't need food. But what makes him a Baal Chesed is not the fact that they ate the food, they didn't eat the food, but that's what I wanted to do. And I tell the story about, I heard this from Meshulam Nahari, who was a minister in Shas party, who said he heard it from Rav Ovadia, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha. I looked and looked, I've never found this medrash, but he said he heard this from Rav Ovadia. That, what was the chesed of Avram? That Avram used to have a tent, and he would offer coffee and food, and people would come in, and they would take food, and Sarah would say, hey, take this, and then they would say, thank you very much, and they would say, don't thank me, go to the man inside the booth, all the way in the back, that old man, his name was Avraham, and thank him. So they go in the back, and they go to Avram Avinu, they say, thank you very much. He says, don't thank me. Thank you. There's something called a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that gave me this, gave you the food. And that's how he was able to bring more and more people Tachas Kanfei Shechina, because through the power of Chesed. So the Medrash says, according to Ravadia, that one time an old man came in and he got some food, and he goes and he says, "Thank you for the food." They said, "Go to the old man in the back." He goes to the old man in the back. He goes to Avraham Avinu, and he says, and Avraham Avinu says, "Listen, don't thank me. It's not me. It's the man upstairs." So the old man says, "Listen, boy, it's not the man upstairs. It's," and he pulls out of his pocket a little tzelem, a little avodah zarah. He says, "This is what gave me the food." So Avraham Avinu says, no, it didn't, it's not what gave me the food. It's Kadosh Baruch Hu. When he starts talking about it, Kadosh Baruch Hu, he says, please. And he's arguing back and forth. And finally, Avraham looks at him and says, "Listen, have a good day." And he walks away. A Baskol comes from Shemayim and yells out, "Avraham, Avraham. For 90 years I've been waiting for that man to come back. And you can't spend 15 minutes?" He just, Medrash continues that Avraham ran out, spent time with him. You never give up on anyone. You never give up. And Oved Hashem never gives up. We're people of mission, people of purpose. Are there nisyonos along the way? Are there difficulties? Absolutely. The chesed of Avraham is the chesed to be driven to do it, want to do it. Whether people want it or not, at the end, whether they accept it or not, it drives me. I'll tell you something else that drives me. They tell the story about the Panovich Rav. Panovich Rav was one of the great people of in Europe. He was the Rav in Panovich, which was the yeshiva in Europe, and he lost his entire family. And he made a promise that for everybody that was lost, his wife, his siblings, his whatever, he's going to build an institution, Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, he built institution after institution, the Panovich Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and all the boys' schools, girls' schools, etc., all in the name of the people, because that was his mission to rebuild Torah. When he was younger, he went to the Chavetz Chaim. And he went to visit the Chavetz Chaim, and he walked into the house, and he heard, and Mrs. Meir Cohen said, "My husband is in the other room. He'll be ready in a minute. Please have a seat." And he sits there. The Panovich Rav wasn't yet the Panovich Rav, and he sits there. And all of a sudden, in the other room, he hears screaming and crying and screaming and crying and crying and crying. And he turns to the Rebbe and he said, "Listen, obviously this is a bad time, because it must be a very big crisis going on in the family that your husband is crying." He says, "No. He's crying for a woman who's giving birth who he doesn't even know who she is." But that's what a Jew does. A Jew is, I'm there. Panovich Rav said, the minute he saw that, he said, "This is who I want my Rav to be." And he stayed there and became a major Talmud, a major student. It wasn't necessarily only the Chachma of the Chavetz Chaim, it was the Midot of the Chavetz Chaim. The Oved Hashem is not only someone who knows Shas and Poskim and backwards and forwards, but you look at them, you could tell that there's something special about what drives them, how they live their lives. And Oved Hashem sometimes has to really step up. The Chavos Halvavos in Shar HaPrisha. Shar HaPrisha is that at times you got to be paresh. You have to separate yourself from everybody else. But I found it very interesting. What the Shar HaPrisha, and it's very important, particularly tonight, to speak to all of you about this. Because as you know, whether you like it or not, you're role models. Believe it or not. People in the Kehillah, what you do and how you speak, it makes a difference to other people. In the Shar HaPrisha, it talks about, I'm just going to read a little bit of it to give you a sense of the framework of this. So Rabbeinu Bachya explains the following, that there's going to be a time, which is certainly now. Now listen to how he explains the kinds of people that are out there. He says there's a society that everything weird in the world to them is normal. And the appropriate way, the right way of the world is weird. What's supposed to be right is wrong, and wrong is right. Morality doesn't mean anything. Immorality, that's we're talking about today. That's the world. Each one of them looks to see how they can benefit from whatever they want to do, and they look around, and someone who's just making it by and spending the rest of the time, for example, in study of Torah, they call them a lazy guy because they could spend a lot more time making a lot more money. Look at this person over here. They're spending time in a shiur. Are they crazy? Right? And someone who is someone who pushes away from more and more and more, it's almost like he's crippled, he's retarded, it's like crazy. Someone who's mistapek, who lives with what they have, is called weak. But someone who looks and tries to do more and get more and benefit more and profit more and that's what drives them, that's a go-go. Are you kidding? Goes further. And what happens is those kinds of people connect together. They get one together. And then there's competition between them, and they start fighting among each other in business and other things. The whole system is out of control. Says the Chovas Halvavos, therefore, there have to be certain people who are prushim. Prushim are people who separate themselves a little bit from all this, who have different priorities. But what's fascinating is the reason why you have to be a parush, he explains, is not because it's so special to be a parush. No. Because maybe you'll become a role model for them. It's not because you have to be super kadosh. No. You don't have to. But if you are super kadosh, other people will start looking at you and they'll become different. Would you realize that the people that are studying Torah here every morning and learning the first X hour of the day, it's not only their limud. The word goes out, some people listen, and it changes other people. That's what's happening. Chovas Halvavos says that's the way you change the Jewish world. You need people who are prushim. A parush means that they're even holier than they have to be for themselves. Because the other world looks at them and says, look at them. They're sitting and learning and they're still successful. How's that working out? Why? So all of a sudden they start thinking their lives differently. So says the Chovas Halvavos, that's what a parush does. Someone who's parush is not only that he becomes holy on his own right. That's not the important part. But as an Oved Hashem, as someone who's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he becomes a representative of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to others. And when you do that, you're on a different level. So starting with being Balei Chesed. Being Balei Chesed doesn't mean necessarily that everything you do works out, but that's what drives you. That's what you want to do. What do you need? How can I help? I happen to know a couple of people in this room And that's how they live their lives. That's it. That's it. Money more, money less. Chesed has to drive us. What has to drive us is if we hear tsar of somebody else, you cry like the Chavetz Chaim. And to be role models. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course he wants to hear the tefillos, and he wants to, but he's looking to say, who are these people? Who am I? It's no happenstance. It's not just didn't happen that when Yaakov Avinu left fighting with Esav, where was the first place he went? Sukkos. Sukkos. First place he went. When Bnei Yisrael left Egypt, the first place they went was Sukkos. Isn't that funny? That the two forces that fought so hard, Yaakov just finished his battle with Esav, and where does he go? The first place? Sukkos. He builds a sukkah. Bnei Yisrael leaving Mitzrayim and everything, the first place they go. What's so special about sukkah? What is it in sukkah? Most people say, you know what it is about sukkah? They say that sukkah is, you sit there, whether it's a Nanei HaKavod, whether it's the holy clouds, or whether it's the sukkah's mamish, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of you, whatever it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has your back, and he's going to sustain you, and you sit in the sukkah, and that's how, that's the feeling that you feel, and the God, Reb Simcha Bunim Pshishta says a little different. I think he says it a lot deeper. He says that there's a relationship between Bnei Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, between the Jewish people and God, that has nothing to do with Torah and mitzvos. Because the story of Yaakov happened before there were Torah and mitzvos. And he built the sukkah. And the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim happened before Torah and mitzvos. And he built the sukkah. So what is sukkah? What are you doing? You sit in the sukkah and say, therefore I'm going to do Torah and mitzvos? No, Rav Pesach Mishpach says, no, that's not what it is. He says, you know what it is? You sit in the sukkah and you feel that this is me, atzmi, etzem, my essence, me, my atzmius. Who I am is bonded with God. It's like he's one of my bones. It's not, he uses a terminology that the mitzvos that you do and the chesed that you do and the gemilas chasadim that you do is a malbush, it's a dress. It's a clothing for the essence of what you're supposed to feel. It's not in the sukkah and I feel so, I'm going to do Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, I can't breathe without him. He's me. He's 100% me. Etzem. It says, from Bunim, that's why. He says it's a lavush. The Ikar Ha'isha Yisraeli, the primary driver of a Jew, Ba'avodas Hashem, in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a Yasig HaBechina Azos. To understand, it's Etzem, Atzmi. It's me. It's a bone. It's part of me. You sit in the sukkah and you're supposed to feel, irrespective of course you'll do mitzvahs, but I can't function without you, God. And if we don't feel it, we're not there yet. If we're doing it out of fear, we're not there yet. If we're doing it out of love, we're not there. You do it because I can't help it. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's part of me. And somehow you can only make that feeling come alive in a sukkah. And that's what Yaakov Avinu felt, that he wanted L'man Yedu Doraseich, and the later generation should know. That's what you do. That's the feeling. You go home, you talk to your family. You know what you talk about? You talk about that. Hashem is part of me. I can't move without him. And not only is he part of me, it says, Lahagid baboker chazdecha ve'munascha baleilos. That in the morning, Lahagid baboker chazdecha, in the morning we talk about the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at night, ve'munascha baleilos, at night, we talk about the emunah, faith that we have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The only thing is, for those, many of you know Hebrew, it's wrong. It should be lahagid baboker chazdecha, in the morning, baboker chazdecha, your chesed, right? Ve'emunatcha, not emunatcha balelot, emunatai. My faith at night. What's emunatcha balelot? Your faith at night. So the pshat is no. Lahagid baboker chazdecha. If we live our lives during the day, the baboker is always the good times. Leilot are the bad times, are the days of struggle, of challenge. If we, in a time of good times, see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lahagid baboker chazdecha, ve'emunatcha baleilot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns around and he said, I believe in you in your times of struggle. I'm praising that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I believe in you, I believe in my children. Emunatcha baleilot. It's an unbelievable idea. And that's why we say, Modeh ani lefanecha melech, right? Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, Raba emunatecha. What does Raba emunatecha mean? Raba emunatecha means, how unbelievable is your trust in us that you give me my neshama every day. Emunatecha, Rabbi emunatecha, by giving me my neshama, that I'm able to live another day. There's someone who lives right near here who tells me that he gets up every morning and he feels to make sure that his body is all there. And then he starts his day. Do you do that? I don't. Rabbi emunatecha, why are you giving me back my life? You know why? Because I believe in you. I believe that today you can make a difference. I believe it. I'm giving you another day. And you know what? I'm giving you another day and another day. Chesed. Imo anochi b'sara. To understand the bond that I have with Kadosh Baruch Hu is his. Then you go and you talk to Hashem differently. The davening is different. The tefillah is different. It's not words. It's not. It's. You know, I had a very, very dear friend who he died in the Swiss Air crash about 21 years ago. And he was a unbelievable person. He was a brilliant attorney. And he was a Choser B'Tshuva. He was a very, very, very special Baal Tzedakah who was my partner in every aspect of Jewish life. And he spent every Yom Kippur with me, wherever I was. From the time I was in my Kollel in Chavetz Chaim in Queens, to shul for many, many years, other places. He was always at my side of Yom Kippur, always. And he died in a crash during Elul, 22 years ago. And the last conversation he had with my son And then I'll tell you a story about him that is just not to be believed, but trust me because it happened to me. So he used to walk. He lived in Fresh Meadows, all the way down to Fresh Meadows. And I live on the other side of Chevy Chase. And he would walk, and at that time also, I was the Raba in Holliswood. So he would walk on Shabbat a mile and a half, then to me a mile and a half, then to his house a mile, and here a mile, and there. Every week. His wife was not a Shomeret Shabbat, so he used to come probably sometimes 2 meals of Shabbat to my house. Very, very, very special Jew. And the children, my children, when they were home, they would love to walk him back on Friday night for a few, to be malava him and to walk as far as possible. And the last time he walked with my older son, they were walking down Saul Weapon Street, which is 188th Street. And happened to be a very dear friend of the Weapons, so it's not a Saul Weapon issue. And he said to my son, "Why would anybody want to name a street after them? What? Why is that the honor that we want in an eternal world?" I mean, that's where his head was. Even though he was this brilliant lawyer and attorney, but that's where his head was. I'll tell you a story about him. That I got a phone call Erev Yom Kippur. And again, this is 22 years ago. He had not yet been found. The crash happened in Canada, in Halifax. He had not yet been found. And I went up to Canada looking part of it. I found his tallis bag. It was just... I get a call from his wife. And she says, "Rabbi, listen, just listen to what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying." She said, "If you want, you can come to the house and take Stanley's shmata, his rag, meaning his kittel, and you could wear it on Yom Kippur." Now, the last thing I wanted to do was to wear his kittel. The last thing. Something he's going to be buried in. But I didn't want to insult her. So I said, okay. On the way, at that time I was running the second meeting in Great Neck Synagogue. I said, on the way, I'm going to go to Northern Boulevard. I'll drive up Northern Boulevard. I'll stop at your house, and we'll go. So I get to the apartment where they lived, and she tells me, go up to the bedroom. It's on the hook in the back of the closet. Take your shmata. I go upstairs, and I see hanging there this white kittel. And first I had the shock of my life because the laundry sticker said my name, because it was my kittel that I was married in, that I gave him. And I take it, and he never washed it, so it smelled of him. But I take it, I'm saying, this is crazy. I can't insult her, so I'll leave it in the car, So I leave the house, and I get back in my car, and I drive to Great Neck and ready for the Suda Mafsekes. Tremendous amount of traffic. I get there, don't have much time, and I'm unpacking the car, and Hashem, at that time we had 5 young children. I'm getting them out of the car, and I have my bags, and I have my svarim, and I have this thing, I have that thing, and I turn to my wife, and I said, God, I see the talis, I see the svarim. Where's my kittel? So she says, what do you mean? I thought you packed it. I said, I didn't pack it. So I said, you didn't pack it? And I remember at that moment looking up to heaven. I said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, checkmate. Checkmate. It's right before Yom Kippur. I can't buy a kittel. What, I'm going to call people for a kittel? Who has an extra? So obviously you want me to wear this kittel. What could I do? What could I do? And that Yom Kippur, the tears. This, the Yom Kippur before that, during the break, I learned with Stanley, Rav Cook, on what will be B'Achris HaYomim, what will be at the end of time. When will Tchias HaMeim? This is what we're discussing. I mean, and I'm wearing this kittel. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. The pain, the tefillos. I get through Yom Kippur. The next morning, I get a phone call from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And they said, Rabbi, we found your friend Stanley Klein. So I'm like, I can't. So I call up Carol. I called up his wife. I said, Carol, I have wonderful news. We found Stanley. She says, I know. I knew it. I said, well, what do you mean you knew it? She says, let me tell you what happened. Before Yom Kippur, Stanley came into the kitchen and said to me, Carol, call Rabbi Butler and ask him, don't tell him, say, if you want, you can wear my kittel for Yom Kippur. So I knew. She says, I knew. He told me. Stanley needed one last Yom Kippur. I did a number of burials on Stanley Klein. Did you know what the burial was? Did 3 burials and not complete. One was his feet. The feet that ran to mitzvahs. The feet that every Shabbos, miles and miles and miles, came to Kfuras Yisrael. And his spine. Shudra, which is the essence of what someone is, came to Kfuras Yisrael. Both sides, we got one last